I never thought I'd have to fight for my disabled daughter's life in our own front yard. But that's exactly what happened on a sweltering afternoon that rewrote everything I believed about suburban safety. One moment, I was inside, enjoying a rare break. The next, I heard her gasping for air, and my heart just about stopped. I ran outside, and there she was, my little girl, clutching the limp, severed end of her oxygen tube, eyes wild with panic. And then I saw Karen, our infamous HOA president, standing right there, garden shears dangling from her hand, a twisted smile on her lips like she'd just trimmed a hedge instead of nearly killing a child. For a split second, the world tilted. I dropped to my knees, fumbling to reconnect the tube, my hands shaking so bad I could barely think. All the medical emergencies I'd prepped for as a parent, all the drills and backups. None of it prepared me for a neighbor deliberately cutting the line that kept my daughter alive. Karen just watched, shrugging like it was no big deal. If your daughter's so fragile, maybe she should stay inside, she spat, as if my child was an eyesore, not a person. My daughter's whole life has been about defying odds. Born with fragile lungs, tethered to a portable tank, but still determined to roll around and live like any other kid. Seeing her struggle, tears streaming, gasping, her body racked with coughs, was too much. I wanted to scream at Karen, make her see the horror she'd caused, but I couldn't fall apart. Not then. Not with my daughter fighting for every breath. Somehow, I dialed 911. My voice shook, my daughter sobbing, and Karen just turned away. The operator told me an ambulance was on the way, and all I could do was pray the backup tank I kept nearby would be enough to keep her alive until help arrived. I managed a makeshift fix, crude, barely functional, but enough for my daughter to draw in shallow breaths. She clung to my arm, her color slowly returning, while Karen folded her arms, rolling her eyes as if we were inconveniencing her afternoon. My rage threatened to boil over, but my daughter needed calm. How could you do this? I finally demanded, my voice low and trembling. Karen just tossed her head. We don't want to see tubes and tanks in our neighborhood. If she's so weak, maybe she belongs inside. My daughter heard every word. She started to cry, trying to speak, but all that came out was a wheeze. Right then, our neighbor Lisa appeared, drawn by the noise. She took one look at my daughter and dropped to her side, gently brushing her hair back. What happened? She asked. I told her, barely able to get the words out. Karen cut her oxygen line. Lisa stared at Karen in disbelief. Karen shrugged. Rules are rules. No unsightly equipment outside. Lisa just whispered to me. Keep her calm. Ambulance is on its way. Minutes passed like hours before the paramedics arrived. They replaced the damaged tube with their own supply, checked her breathing, loaded her onto a gurney. I told them about the backup cylinder at home. They nodded, but said she should be checked at the hospital, just in case. As they wheeled her away, I turned to Karen, shaking with anger. You could have killed her. Karen just scoffed. She's still breathing, isn't she? Lisa gently grabbed my arm, warning me not to escalate. I rode in the ambulance, holding my daughter's hand. She looked so small, hooked to all those tubes. Dad, why would she do that? She whispered through her mask. What could I say? That some people only see differences and want to erase them? I squeezed her hand, promising she was precious. That ignorance sometimes breeds cruelty, but that we wouldn't let it win. At the hospital, they checked everything. Her lungs, her heart, her blood oxygen. She clung to me through every test, flinching at each nurse who came close. I stepped out to call my wife, barely able to explain. She was furious, scared, and promised to get there as soon as she could. When I came back in, a police officer was waiting. He listened carefully, then took my statement, every ugly detail about what Karen had done. He nodded gravely. This is a serious crime. If proven intentional, it could be felony assault, possibly more. He asked if anyone else saw it. I told him Lisa had been there. He jotted down her name, then handed me his card. We'll pursue this, he promised, but it takes time. Later that night, back home, I got a call from the FBI, of all people. The agent explained that the deliberate destruction of medical equipment for a disabled child was a possible violation of federal law. We take ADA violations seriously, especially if there's a pattern, he said. I told him everything, gave him Lisa's info. He said they'd follow up. The next morning, while my wife stayed home to care for our daughter, I took a call from another neighbor, her voice breathless. The FBI's outside Karen's house. You need to get back, now. When I arrived, the street was packed with agents and unmarked cars. My wife, wide-eyed, hurried our daughter inside. The agents told us Karen was being investigated for harassment, financial scams, even document forgery related to HOA business. Inside, our daughter curled on the couch, trembling. Will they make her go away, Daddy? I promised her that the people in charge were finally listening, that no one would hurt her again. We watched as agents carried boxes out of Karen's house, neighbors whispering, filming, the whole block finally seeing what she really was. Agent Copeland, the lead investigator, stopped by later. He explained that Karen wasn't just a petty tyrant. She had a documented history of harassing families she saw as undesirable, and might have forged signatures to evict or fine them. For the first time in a long while, I felt hope that justice would catch up. Days went by. Our daughter started therapy to process the trauma. Neighbors brought meals, some apologizing for not standing up to Karen sooner. Others shared their own stories. How Karen had threatened to tow wheelchair vans, slap fines on families who didn't fit in. The fear that once hung over the street started to lift. Eventually, Karen was formally charged: felony destruction of medical equipment, civil rights violations, fraud. Agent Copeland said more charges could follow. My wife and I agreed to testify, along with Lisa and other residents. We got updates as the case wound through court, learning about how Karen's actions had affected so many people. Meanwhile, a new HOA president was elected, someone who promised to revise every rule Karen abused, to make sure our neighborhood was truly inclusive. The day of the trial, the courtroom was packed. Neighbors, witnesses, even paramedics from that day. The prosecutor played audio from a neighbor's phone, Karen's voice sneering. If she can't breathe, she shouldn't be outside. The room went silent. After hours of testimony, the jury found her guilty on all counts. Leaving the courthouse, the air felt lighter. Neighbors hugged us, some crying with relief. Our daughter stayed home, drawing pictures of horses and flowers. When I told her Karen was gone for good, she nodded and whispered, "She can't hurt anyone else now?" "Not anymore, sweetheart," I said, and meant it. Life moved forward. The neighborhood, once divided by fear, came together. People helped each other, shared tips on accessibility, and promised to protect the vulnerable. Our daughter got braver, venturing outside, riding her scooter, laughing in the autumn sun. Sometimes she'd glance over her shoulder, just to check, but each time she saw us, her parents, her community, cheering her on. So yeah, that's how we survived a nightmare, and saw our block transformed by a moment of cruelty no one could ignore. Funny how quickly things can change, right? One neighbor's hatred nearly took a life, but in the end, it forced everyone to ask, what kind of community do we want to be? What would you have done if you saw it happen? Would you have stepped in or looked away? Let me know what you think. Should Karen get a second chance? Or are there some lines you just can't uncross? Does justice mean punishment or rebuilding trust? Share your thoughts below, because stories like ours aren't as rare as you might hope, and the conversation is far from over.